I'm going to talk to you about the influences to modern Nigeria, some of the key history pieces that are talked about in the chapter. Your job for today's video is to take notes on what things happen in these time periods that influenced the Fourth Republic. The Fourth Republic is the time period that Nigeria is in currently. That's their current government. You can use this video, or you can use pages 612 through 619 in O'Neill to help you fill out the graphic organizer. You will need to turn that in on Canvas to show evidence of doing this assignment. So to start off, if we look at British colonialism, the first point that we have contact from the Western world to Nigeria that's important to note is that 3 million slaves were taken from Nigeria to the Americas. Although the slavery operations, the enslaved persons were captured by Africans and then sold to the British and other European countries. The fact is that European countries didn't venture very far into Africa. They actually didn't go much past the coast until 1861, where they had a Berlin Conference, which began the scramble for Africa. And we're going to talk about that very in-depthly when we get to AP World History next year. But what happens is that Europe actually divides up Africa amongst themselves without any input from anyone who actually lives in Africa. And they say, hey, if you can, cover that land, if you can have people from your country there, you can claim it. And so England sets up a policy of indirect rule. They set up an indirect rule where they're like, hey, we get to be in charge, we get to govern, but here's the thing, we can't actually rule these people because these people don't want to be ruled by England. So they set up a system of indirect rule where they're like, look, we're going to let you keep your local customs. And so today, in the north of Nigeria, they have Sharia law. They have a separate Muslim court system. That tradition started during the British rule where they said, hey, look, we're going to let you guys have a separate court system from South Nigeria. English becomes the lingua franca, similar to French becoming the lingua franca of different parts of Western Africa. That is still true today. In that everyone in Nigeria studies English in school, and if two Nigerians from different parts of the country meet, they are most likely to speak to each other in English. In 1914, the UK establishes Nigeria. But what's weird about establishing this country of Nigeria is if you look at this map, you can see that there's a lot of linguistic and ethnic diversity throughout all of Africa, but particularly around the area where Nigeria is set up. In Nigeria, they have more than 250 ethnic groups. The north part of Nigeria is Muslim, and the south part is animist and Christian. And there are 25 different languages spoken in the Nigerian Delta. We have, if you look here, that the Igbo are mainly Christian. The Yoruba are Christian, Muslim, and animist faiths. And the northern part are mostly Muslim. Okay, so there's a lot of diversity within Nigeria, and I think it's important to recognize that Nigerians didn't necessarily think of themselves as Nigerians, and that's an issue that Nigerians still have today. I want to show you a clip from this author from Nigeria where he talks about the fact that the British as a colony created Nigeria and how one of the legacies of colonialism is that Nigeria doesn't think of itself as a country. And matter of fact, one of the issues that they have in Nigeria is that they have been created as an artificial country, artificial community.
Where is it, first of all? Well, Nigeria is going through very difficult times. And when you say that, it's actually a statement that needs some kind of contextualizing because Nigeria has been a difficult address since its founding by the British. I think that Nigeria still exhibits all the symptoms of some artificial community. The British put together Nigeria, collected close to 400, perhaps some would suggest more than 400 different ethnic groups and languages into this behemoth that they named Nigeria. I don't think that that the British imagined for a moment that Nigeria was going to coalesce into a meaningful community. It served the purposes of British colonialism to have this huge space where they could exploit the raw materials and then dump the goods, produce goods, and so on. Now, having taken over from the British, in 1960 at independence, the political elite in Nigeria did not pay attention to what was the task of nation building, a task that was urgent, as urgent now as it was in 1960. And it continues to, sadly, it continues to be abdicated by the political elite. And so Chinua Achebe, the great Nigerian novelist, famously said that Nigeria is a country that manages to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And I say sometimes that Nigeria is a nation that was conceived with some hope, but has been nurtured into hopelessness.
So thinking about this, in the late 1950s, independence movements swept through Africa, where country after country was saying, you know what? We would like to chart our own destiny. We do not want to be controlled by Europe. And eventually, in 1960, Nigeria receives independence, and they actually create their first republic. This period is short-lived. In 1965, they have their first coup d'etat, and unfortunately, I'm using the word first for a reason. When Nigeria became a country, they had a lot of problems right away. They had huge ethnic divisions within the country. They were trying to figure out, how do we give people political voice, but also hold our people together? And as the author just explained, as a matter of fact, they didn't have a common political identity. And so in 1965, they had elections. They had horrible violence after those elections. 2,000 people died. And so what happens is that the military decides to actually, impose order. They end up, they try to oppose order, but actually what ends up happening is that it actually sets off the Nigerian Civil War. A civil war that cost a lot of military and civilian lives. Your textbook says estimates run from 500,000 to 3 million deaths just in that war. So our next clip is from the same author, and what he's going to do is talk about the Nigerian Civil War and, how that civil war was a failure of Nigeria in actually achieving any sense of nationhood.
Images of that war. Yes.
When did it happen, and what was the issue?
Well, the war was between 1967. It ended in 1970 with calamitous consequences. About 2 to 3 million people died. Most of them civilians. A lot of them children and women from starvation. I think that a way to sort of speak about the war, because it's one of those sharply divided memories that we have in Nigeria, so that there is no agreement on what or who caused the war. But I think that one way of explaining the Biafran War is that it was a consequence of the failure of Nigeria to achieve a sense of nationhood. And so there was a coup d'etat in January of 1966 in which Igbo speaking, my part of Nigeria, military officers staged a coup. Most of the casualties, most of the politicians who were killed were from other parts of Nigeria. And so there was a kind of reprisal in June of 1966 where northern officers staged a counter coup in which they targeted Igbo officers. And then this was followed by a series of targeted attacks on Igbo Christians and people from the southeastern part of Nigeria. And this series of attacks then led to this groundswell of demands for secession by the southeastern part of Nigeria to become a different nation.
What would you find today if you went to that part of Nigeria
that fought the war?
Biafra.
Well, what you find today is actually that there is a resurgence of sentiment for secession again. That a lot of young people who are really disappointed in all the failure in Nigeria are seeing a resurgence of Biafra as a solution to their sense of despair, to their hopelessness.
100.
So Nigeria continues to struggle as a new country. So after the Civil War, they have military rule after the Civil War until 1976. The military divided Nigeria up into federal states. We see that continuing to this day. They were hoping to weaken the ethnic and regional power by doing that. They also moved the economy from being focused on agriculture to being focused on oil. And by the 1970s, Nigeria was one of the top 10 producing oil countries in the world. One negative of military rule was that it simply replaced one form of patronism or patronage with another. So instead of the government being ruled by people based on ethnic, realities and like connections, now it was being ruled by oil money and being used as bribes as a way to get people to go with the flow. In 1976, we have a transition to civilian rule, and we end up with the Second Republic in 1979. There's a new constitution then, and it made Nigeria a presidential system instead of a parliamentary system. And as you know, Nigeria continues to be a presidential system to this day. Unfortunately, in 1983, military rulers again seized power because ethnic factionalism was very high, as well as there was economic crisis because there was a high rise in inflation due to the falling prices of oil. And that caused a lot of unrest. So the military rulers come in again. They establish rule and order. And the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank pressure the military government into neoliberal structural adjustment programs, which we will discuss as a part of this unit. Structural adjustment programs are designed by the IMF and World Bank in order to help a country be able to pay off their loans, and Nigeria had a lot of them. In order to pay off their loans, they had to make drastic cuts in spending for government programs, which obviously hurt the civilians. In 1993, they had a transition to civilian rule, again with the Third Republic, but the Third Republic fails. During military rule, activist Ken Saro-Wiwa is executed. And the reason why I want to note this is because he is a vocal critic of the regime, but also of Shell Oil. And frequently on the test, they like to ask about his murder by the state. And in part, this idea of being able to criticize the government and allowing people to voice dissent and not actually murder them by the part of the state is an important test as to whether or not your democracy is successful. Because a key part of a democracy is that you allow people to actually voice displeasure. In 1999, the military ends its rule again, and they establish the Fourth Republic. And that is the time period we are in today. During the Fourth Republic, some things are set up that we still see today that are sort of concerns that we have. So one is that under the Fourth Republic, they are continuing to use what's called patrimonialism, where you have personal rule by both authoritarian and democratic rulers, and they give economic privileges to people who are their loyal followers. And they're using oil revenue in order to do this, and that continues to today, which means that corruption continues to be a key concern in Nigeria. Another key concern has been that the Boko Haram, which are Muslim extremists in the northern part of Nigeria, they have become a growing issue since 2009. It is hard for Nigeria to continue to be a functioning democracy or to become more democratic when they are basically fighting a war within their own borders. There are some hopeful signs in terms of Nigeria being a democratic country, in terms of there's more space now for independent media, there's more space now for human rights organizations, and there is a growing middle class. When looking at the Fourth Republic, I think there's two important elections to be able to look at. The first was that Goodluck Jonathan was vice president from 2007 to 2010, but then during that administration, the president gets very ill, and so he becomes the acting president, and then he runs for president. Jonathan is a member of the Igbo ethnic group and a Christian, and he was born and raised in the region of the Niger Delta, which is in the south. He was with the People's Democratic Party. When Jonathan unexpectedly began his term as president, people were concerned that this was a violation of the PDP's unofficial policy of rotating who got to be the president between candidates from the predominantly Christian South and the predominantly Muslim North. And they were worried that this is going to lead to a civil war because this sort of unwritten rule was being violated when he became president, and then ran for presidency and then won. But Nigeria's tenuous democracy survived. The current president is Muhammadu Buhari, and he is the current president. He was a military leader and a politician who served as Nigeria's head of state in 1984 and 1985 during military rule. And he has been democratically elected to president in 2015 and re-elected in 2019. Before that, he actually ran for president, I believe, 4 other times, but wasn't elected. He is with the All Progressive Congress Party. He was born in northern Nigeria and is Muslim. He beat Goodluck Jonathan in the 2015 election, and his election marked the first time that the incumbent president was defeated in Nigeria, and again, they had another successful, peaceful transition. And so our hope is that Nigeria can continue on this path. But as any political scientist will tell you, it is too soon to tell whether or not the Fourth Republic will continue or whether or not, unfortunately, Nigeria will return to military rule again.